All right. Welcome back to Life Changing Challengers. My name is Brad Minus. I am your host again, and with me is Coach Jonathan McLernan. He's a weight loss coach. He's a podcaster, and he's an innovator in the weight loss environment. So how you doing today, Jonathan?
Fantastic. I think every day is a good day when you have kids. I have a 3-year-old and 8-month-old. Some parents might say it's one of the more challenging times in life, but there's nothing better than baby snuggles. And not too long before coming here to record, I get snuggles from an 8-month-old, and I just go like, man, I wish I could bottle this up. I just want to cherish this because I know I can't keep it forever.
So as I ask every guest of mine, can you tell us about your childhood, how you grew up, what was the environment like? Give us a good picture into what was Jonathan like as a kid.
Well, I had a very unique start to the world. I joke that I was a failure of 1980s birth control. Shout out to my parents. My brother was 14 months old at the time that I was born. I was born at 26 weeks, so I was not expected to survive. I was born at home 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning on a little island called Hatzic Island, which is just outside of the city of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. I haven't published this book yet, but I've been writing a book kind of about my story. So one day it's in the shiny object store. So I actually interviewed my parents about this because I actually now as an adult want to understand what it was like for you when you were actually younger than me. And, for my dad, when my mom says, I think the baby's coming, my dad's like, what? He's not due till April. It's January. And apparently it was about 2 seconds worth of labor. And there I was. And my dad said I was blue, ears folded over, eyes shut. And the first thing my mom said was, is it alive? Yeah. So my dad had the presence of mind to do CPR with his pinky finger. And I guess that's when I started crying. And that kind of got my lungs inflated and my heart going. It was probably 15, 20 minutes before the ambulance could get there because it was January, it's winter, it's slushy, snowy, and it's kind of out of the city. And they got me to one place before taking me to another place at Royal Columbian, hospital. They told my parents, don't get too attached because you might not make it. So they said, we got him, go home, be with your 14-month-old, and come back in a day or two. So that was my start in life. I don't remember a lot of it, but...
Yeah. Is that normal? I mean, is that, no, as far as hospitals go in Canada, do they literally tell people to, all right, listen, if we can't do anything, you need to go home and then come back in a couple of days?
This was 1982. So... maybe things were just a little bit different back then. The other thing is, so the hospital they brought me to, which is the best hospital they get me to, was probably an hour's drive away from where my parents lived. It's middle of winter. It's slushy, cold, icy. My mom's got a 14-month-old. My dad's, I think he was a pest control exterminator at the time, working crazy hours. It was just rough. So I think they're actually just trying to give my parents a break. So we got good nurses here, things like that. We're going to take care of them. Just, don't get too attached until we know if this one's going to live. So as evidenced by my presence here, I did make it. But that was my start in life. Along with that, actually, apparently comes some complications, and sometimes they don't show up till later in life, or things that you go I wonder why this was always a little bit tougher for me. But when you skip a trimester, which is basically what I did, I skipped 14 weeks in the womb, there's a lot of motor development that normally would take place. I got 2 boys, and both of them, it was like they rode bicycles inside my wife's uterus, when she was pregnant with them. They're like, hey, if your kid has less than 10 kicks an hour, I think it is, we're like, man, these guys have 100 kicks a minute. What is going on? My wife could hardly sleep. So I'm on life support in an incubator, gold-plated, if you will, because apparently they're very good conductors, gold is.
Yeah. And
the nurses, I think, called me their little chipmunk because I had these puffy cheeks. That was maybe the one thing that was big. Everything else was like toothpicks, but I had puffy cheeks. He looks like a little chipmunk. I was 2 pounds, 9 ounces. I went down to 2 pounds, 1 ounce, and then kind of started gaining weight. They said, looks like this kid's a fighter. He just might make it, kind of thing. And so I think my mom, I was kind of on life support for about 9 weeks. And then they're like, it looks like he's going to make it. He can probably take him home now, kind of thing. But they had to work really hard to teach me motor skills. I don't think I walked until I was maybe a year and a half, maybe 16 months, somewhere around there. So without that time in the womb, you don't sort of get that motor development. I also had very, very poor eyesight. I had laser eye surgery, so it's good now. I've had issues with digestion most of my life. It's cool that you can survive that kind of thing, but there's a few other things that start to show up. They're like, oh, okay. When you don't get sort of the same level of development, it's not quite the same. So that was my start in life.
I imagine that the brain has a big development going on at that time of the trimesters and things.
Yeah.
Did you find anything once you got to school?
Well, I joke that I got a really good brain, but I got it free of charge, so I can't really take the credit for it. What I kind of lacked in physical coordination, like I was kind of just awkward. No, I wasn't even like awkward in the clumsy sense, but like just learning how to kick a ball, swing a bat, like the normal things that kids do. It just took me longer to figure it out. I described it as, it just felt like there was this disconnect between my brain and my arms and my legs. And I couldn't really figure out why. It was just like, it just doesn't work. So, but it wasn't like, I mean, I didn't go through any special like physical therapy. It was just, yeah, I guess you miss out on something. You have to work harder to create those brain connections. What's really cool though, is that your brain can do that. That shout out to neuroplasticity and your brain's ability to learn these things. Because I went to like his kindergarten class and I'm trying to answer all the questions. And they're like, whoa, slow down, kid. You're not going to school for another year yet. Like, it's okay. So it turns out later in life, I learned that I have ADHD. I'm like, oh, that explains why my brain works the way it does. Right.
I'm sorry. There's some parallels that are going on between you and me. I was 6 weeks preemie, but back then that's still full term. Or at least closer than you were. Let's put it that way.
Close, but still.
Yeah. But I also, now that you say that, and, you know, I grew up in the 70s. So, and then in the 80s, 70s.
Look, I have more gray hair than you. You just can't see it because my hair's cut short.
My dad, I always had that. He started me in hockey, then tried baseball, and I never was really good at any of it. I went to soccer, and I'm better, but not great. You know, nothing ever came up. Nothing came up of it. I was a mediocre student, but if you sat me down and made me do the work, I could do it, and I could do it rather quickly and understand it. And I didn't find out till I was 33 that I had ADHD. So the parallels are amazing.
Well, and so back then they would have never known to look for it. So here's why I think I got overlooked. I have a really good memory as well. And my kid seems to have inherited. My 3-year-old recites entire books back to me. And I was like, is this normal? Like, I don't have a lot of experience with kids. My wife has been a child entertainer and childhood educator. And she's like, no, it's not normal. He's got your memory. I'm like, oh, okay. So normally with ADHD, people struggle as you have to focus more and start to learn more complex topics. But because I have in sort of the traditional educational sense where you learn information, regurgitate it for tests, I could ace tests without really having to study very much. I just kind of like show up and do it. And then I kind of have a bit of like an engineering brain as well. I can figure out pretty quickly how things work. And so I think I got pretty good at like faking it. Like I scored really high grades. I was known as like a pretty smart kid, and I am in a sense. But it was actually in a conversation with a fellow coach, maybe a couple months ago. And I was talking about my 3-year-old, and she said, here's something you got to watch out for. They can sound like they really understand something, and they have no idea because they know what the right answer is supposed to sound like, but it doesn't mean they actually grasp it. So just be careful, because he'll go through school like that, not actually learning as much as you think he is, but being able to give you the right answers. And I was like, man, he kind of just hit on my education. In high school, I made the honor roll year after year because I could recite all the answers. But most times I had very little interest in actually learning this stuff. I just would recite it, and then once I was done writing a test, I'd promptly forget it. In terms of childhood, like growing up, I had a pretty good childhood. I look back now through an adult lens and I go, my dad in particular had a really hard life. I now understand why he struggles and has struggled with the various things he did. I have so much compassion and love for him because of who he has worked to be and become. He grew up in a household that really had no love for him. It was basically a cuff upside the head kind of thing. But then my grandfather was a prisoner of war from World War II, captured by the Germans in North Africa, like came back with PTSD, but they didn't call it that back then. Married out of Germany. Yeah. Which it's kind of funny because I think shell shock is actually a pretty good expression. I'm like, it's a pretty accurate way of describing like what's happening to their brain kind of thing. You just relive the same thing over and over again. And we'll get to my PTSD later on. What fascinates me is patterns. So I look at my grandfather and what he experienced. He would have went to war as a relatively young man. He just experienced the horrors of war. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing glorious about it. It's just awful. It's just a meat grinder for most who fight in that. Comes back, marries out of a sense of duty. My grandmother, the reason why she married him is because her fiance was an English army officer and he was killed in the war. my grandfather's from New Zealand. He had an accent somewhat similar to the British accent. My grandmother was educated at McGill in Montreal, and then got her PhD in political science from Harvard. She was one of the first women to get a PhD from Harvard. My grandmother probably should have been royalty or something, I guess. And my grandfather just married out of a sense of duty and fathered children because that's just what you did. That was the groundwork for my dad. And my dad had a twin brother who unfortunately passed away via suicide at the age of 23. He suffered from severe bipolar disorder. It was not really understood back then. At least it was peaceful for him. But of course, for my dad, the one person in his life through his entire childhood that was by his side, that understood him, that knew him, like that gave him stability when his parents didn't, was taken from him. So I just say that because I think about a human being like going through that. The other things that my dad was shipped all over the world to boarding schools. So my grandfather was an oil field geologist. One year he's in Libya. Next year he's in, I don't know, some other country. He actually came to Calgary, Alberta, like not far from where I'm from, but most of my dad's sort of growing up years were kind of either boarding school in England, in Victoria, British Columbia, or New Zealand and Australia. So you put that level of instability with no love into a developing brain, like my dad just knew that he didn't want to be like his dad. He didn't know what to, and so that was, and why I share that is because that sort of shaped some of my response to experiences I went through and struggles that I had, but I didn't know it at the time. So the other thing I struggled with as a kid was temper tantrums. Turns out I'm an empath. For most of my life, I would have had no idea what an empath even was.
Right.
I seem to have an ability to read people that I can't really describe. Read, sense, whatever. I joke that my coaching superpower is X-ray vision. I can't explain it. But as a kid, like what it means is like I take on all these emotions and I don't know how to. I don't know how to filter them or anything. And eventually they have to be expressed. And so it just comes out as a flood of emotions. Wild temper tantrum, kicking and screaming and pounding the floor but it's now I look back and I go, my brain was overloaded. It didn't know what to do with all these big feelings running around in it. My parents would stick my head under the cold shower to basically shock me out of it because they didn't know what else to do back then. And I go,
wow. Yeah, because because the feelings that you wanted to express weren't even yours.
And so I wouldn't have had words for it. And from their perspective, the way that they were raised, like I was acting out and I was misbehaving and things like that. And I'm not angry at my parents. I love them dearly. They live 10 minutes drive away. I love them. I'm so glad they're in my life. I'm so glad I still have them in my life. And but I look back and I go, they didn't really know what to do with this kid. And I go, I probably wouldn't have either if I was raised in that era and raised. My mom had a beautiful, wonderful upbringing. Her upbringing was lovely, all things considered. There's still tragedy in her life too, but it was much better. So that kind of shaped. So as a young boy, like going to school, I got into a lot of fights as well. Because I was like I had a temper, I was a hothead, whatever. But there's always a part of me, and I was a pretty big kid until about 13 when I was 6'1" at 13, and then I just stopped. I was like, oh great, I'm going to be like 6'7" and basketball player because that was the one sport I was reasonably good at. I just stopped at 6'1". I was like, at 13, I was like, I peaked early. But as a kid, I would get into a lot of fights. And I in a sense, won a lot of fights. But back then, back in the day, schoolyard fights were like, once one kid was on the ground, the fight was considered done. It was considered that you won. There's none of this like filming it for social media, stomping the kid, going back to other kids, pounding. It was a scrap. You might even have got up and shaken hands after the fight kind of thing. Maybe not, but like you kind of got over it. But I would go home and I would cry afterwards. And I didn't know why, because I didn't know I was an empath. I didn't know that like the fight that we were having, whatever I was doing, and if I hurt a kid, I'd go home and cry afterwards. And I didn't know why I was crying after I won a fight.
Hey, because you were feeling the other person's, you were feeling the guy that you were fighting.
Yeah. So then I realized I don't want to get into fights anymore.
Yeah. Because
it hurts me. Even if I win the fight, like it hurts me on the inside. I don't know why. Again, as a kid, I had no way to understand these feelings, right? Like had no frame of reference, like most parents, my parents had no background in psychology or understanding of any of these things. I just knew that I was troubled by these things and I couldn't put words to it. So, yeah, so I kind of coasted through school. Ended up going to university studying music and chemistry, of all things.
Music and chemistry. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I thought, well, I love music. I've got an ear for it. So kind of have an ear for music, languages, and mathematics. They all kind of seem to go together.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to be practical. Maybe I'll just be a teacher. I grew up in a little town, 2,000 people, like no internet, right? Like my ideas weren't very big about what I was going to do with my life back then. So I was like, it seems to make sense. Like maybe I'll just do something reliable, like become a teacher. I'll go study music and chemistry. Then I can be a science teacher. And chemistry is kind of in demand more than biology is because biology is easy. So, and physics was maybe just more than I wanted to do, more effort.
Right.
So chemistry felt like the middle road. Turns out chemistry is pretty challenging too when you get into the upper level, calculations, quantum mechanics and things like that. But so that's what I did. Then I realized, okay, I probably don't have much of a future in music. I actually don't want to teach music. I don't think I'm going to become a famous musician or even a producer to famous people. So then I kind of was like, now what do I do with my life? So I left university. I was like, okay. I wrote some exams. I left and I went and joined the Navy.
Wow. The Canadian Royal Navy?
Yeah, Royal Canadian Navy.
Royal Canadian Navy, the RCN. Right.
Yeah. They put the Royal term back in there, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I became a marine engineer. So working on anything with moving parts. And part of me enjoyed being in the military. I liked, in some sense, the structure, predictability of it. But the other part of me just got insanely bored. Again, I had no idea this was ADHD, but I was just like, and I wouldn't say I got into like a lot of trouble, but I didn't fit in that well with like, you're supposed to just shut up and do your job. And I didn't register in me that like, there's a reason why they're not actually picking the most efficient way to do this. They're trying to give you something to do because you're in a floating steel box in the middle of the ocean with nothing to do, and bored people get into trouble. So they're just keeping you busy. But I was kind of too smart for the game, too smart for my own good, open mouth a little bit too often. And so I was one step below chief engineer in my educational path. So I was basically chief, like I ran an engineering crew, and then we'd have like three sort of these engineering officers, and then you have your chief engineer on top of that. But my rank was like 2 hooks. So I had guys that were like two ranks above me in terms of their rank in the military, but they were under me in terms of my department. I was in this weird place. And there's a bunch of politics in there too. And I just joked that I was the wrong demographic, frankly, no offense to anybody, but I was the wrong demographic. I didn't speak French, like they were looking for bilingual, and they were looking to get more women into positions of responsibility. And hey, that's a great thing. Nothing against that. And I just opened my mouth too many times, and it's like, I'm never going to get promoted. Clearly, it doesn't matter how good I am. I in fact, I topped the merit list 2 years in a row. That's like, in your trade, that's the rankings of like how you perform in your trade.
Right.
You'd think that would have got me promoted, but it didn't, because I didn't toe the line.
Right.
So I left the military. My wife and I packed up our lives. Oh, along the way, I met a woman, got married to her. She's from Australia. So when you mentioned Queensland, oh yeah, been over there a few times, mate. Yeah. Oh, it's right. So I came home and said, let's just go teach English somewhere. So we kind of packed everything up into a storage unit, hopped on a plane to Mexico, and flew down to Puerto Vallarta. Not much of a plan. We're like, oh, maybe we'll just kind of go for one of those like 6-week adventures or something like that to sort of see. 3 years before we ever found our way back to Canada. and really it was in the travels where like I had some really hard experiences that we can get into if it's I'm sure it will be of value for your audience. And that's where the struggles really started. But now you have a bit of my backstory.
Right. So, you know what? I have never done an episode on myself, and I do that specifically because I want to be able to do comparables with my audience members. And again, we've already done that. And I was in the military for 9.5 years, and I was almost in the same position, but I was lucky enough to be put in positions where I was able to make my jobs. So my first duty station was Korea.
Okay.
And they put me in what they called in and out processing. And at that time, what we were supposed to do is they would do the forms that when people came into country, you would basically say, okay, if you get hurt, these are the people that get your benefits. Let's make sure that your records are updated, and then we'll give you your orders, and you'll be sent to your unit here in Korea, where that might be. And that's where I was. Well, when I was first given there, it was typewriters with carbon paper in the sheet. You actually typed on the typewriter, blah, 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 which was a lot of waste because they would make one mistake, and you can't use whiteout because whiteout doesn't go through carbon paper. Right. Yeah. And I'm really like digging deep here. So I was, but what's interesting is that when I first got in country, the person I was replacing wasn't done yet. So I had to be put on, just like what you said. I was put on busy work because they had to keep me busy before my trace opened up. Well, they were told that we had to do inventory on this Quonset hut. And I'm looking at the Quonset hut, and there's a bunch of computers sitting there. And I'm like, well, what are those? Well, those are 486s. You probably won't even not recognize that name. But they are 486s, which is like one of the 286 came, and then the 486 came, which was IBM compatible PCs. And those are 486s. We don't use them anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I go back and I get into my duty station, and I'm all of a sudden I'm on typewriters and carbon paper. And I'm like, I went to the captain. I'm like, there's these things, they're sitting there. Well, those are used for casualty operations when we go to the field. Well, when do we go to the field? Once every quarter. And I'm like, oh, well, once every quarter for what, 30 days? And they're like, no, 3. We go for 3 days because our operations here are too important to be down for that long. So I was like, well, that's kind of a waste when you've got a whole freaking section, 2 sections actually, in and out processing using typewriters and carbon paper. So I can take 4 hours off their time. Now, in and out processing, they would be gone from 5 a.m, and they'd be struggling. They'd be coming into the barracks about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, where everybody else had a regular 8-hour day.
Right, yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I was given those opportunities, and that wasn't the only opportunity. Because of that, I networked all these computers together. I got a printer thing, and they finally I requisitioned the software, and all of a sudden I took their 10-hour day and brought it down to 6 hours.
Amazing.
So now they can do PT. Now they were able to go they were able to go on FTXs and the whole bit. So the captain was like, all right, well, we need you to do that without processing too. And then after that, they're like, well, you seem to know a lot about this stuff, so why don't we put you in what we call the J2, which is the information section. And then you'll work with the information section instead. So I was like, perfect. Then I got to the Pentagon, and the same thing happened. There was an opportunity, and I took it, just like you. I literally. So those parallels are amazing. I wish I had the didactic memory that you did. But yeah. So all right. So you spent 3 years in Mexico.
No, sorry, I only spent 6 months. 6 months in Mexico. 3 years total traveling.
Oh, okay.
So we moved down we flew down Puerto Vallarta, and then we went inland to Guadalajara because we're like, we want to. Guadalajara is the second biggest city in Mexico, 6-7 million people. And we went to a school down there to get a 4-week English teaching certificate, which they did a practicum in a school around the corner. It was a nice little setup, and then there's jobs teaching English there. And we got a little hacienda just down the road. So it was basically, it used to be like a large house where you'd like go through these big, tall, like probably 20-foot tall doors where like horse and buggy would come through. And the bottom floor would have been like all horse stables back in the day, like 100 years ago or long, Now it was just each horse stable was converted into, there's a bed and a bedside table and a couple chairs kind of thing. It's a room that you pay like $100 a month for kind of thing. And so we just walked to and from the school in this like downtown part of Guadalajara, but like there weren't a lot of white people there. For those who are watching, you can see I don't look very Mexican, nor does my wife. Now, I loved living down there. My students were amazing. What was so cool is, for them, like learning English like meant something because it was like, a door to opportunity. And so they were so enthusiastic about learning. My wife's a born performer. It's just what she does. And we would horse around with our students, tell jokes, sing songs, whatever. There was one point where we were in a building where it had like a, I don't know, say 7 stories, and had like a big sort of atrium in the middle, and then all glass on the inside. So you could see across to other classrooms, basically. And there was like the director or the head of the school had a classroom right across from mine. And so he'd be, all stern and whatever, and like writing on his whiteboard. And I'd like bust out, I'd pull off my Sharpie or my whiteboard marker, and I'd start using like a microphone. I'd just start like blasting out, singing out a song kind of thing. And his class would then start looking through the glass at whatever I was doing, because clearly they were more interested in this guy like writing sentences on the whiteboard. And then he'd turn around and see what was going on. And of course, I would just whip around and pretend to be like writing on the whiteboard again, like nothing was happening. And it kind of became this game. But oh man, and I tell you what, living down there, like the average Mexican, like when they're not looking for your tourist dollars, like they're just some of the warmest, most hospitable people. Man, they love to eat and dance and whatever. Like it was just, and we just made like local friends who, again, they, because we didn't have a bunch of money either. That's the funny thing. I was like, hey, guess what? We're getting paid the equivalent of $4 an hour. Like it was, we're not rich either. And so they like showed us like some of the local spots that you go to and save money and whatnot. There was one time we were supposed to meet someone at a coffee shop, and we walked in. So my wife and I walk in this coffee shop. So already we stand out because we're very white. Like I used to get called Casper as a kid, right? So we walk into this sort of somewhat dimly lit coffee shop / bar, and a bunch of heads like turn to look at us, and this guy comes up, very nicely, but he's like, I think you're in the wrong place. And we kind of just like took stock as your eyes kind of adjust to this like dimly lit room. And it was very clearly a gay bar, which is very interesting in Mexico. Mexico's still quite conservative, but Guadalajara is a little bit more liberal of a city. And I was like, yeah, it's just a bunch of gay men, dressed very flamboyantly. And they're like, you can stay if you want, but you're in the wrong place. I was like, no, I think our friends wanted us in that coffee shop over us. I just got the wrong side of the street, apparently. And we got a few whistles and things like that. Like, but it was all kind of in good-natured fun. But it's just, look, they have fun down there. They kind of had fun with life in general. Obviously there's another part of Mexican life that's really, really difficult. That's the cartels and all those kind of stuff, human trafficking, the whole dark side of it. Of course, we didn't see a lot of that, thankfully. But we also knew the police were corrupt. So you have like the federales who drive around in like these big black armored pickup trucks, 6 guys in the back with automatic weapons and maybe mounted 50 cal. And you're just like, just turn your head and just kind of look away. Just don't draw attention to yourself. We wore shabby clothes and stuff because another teacher who was from the US, he got pulled over when he was in a taxi, and they're like, hey, we found this bag of cocaine in your pocket. And he was like, no, you didn't. And the taxi driver was like, shut up, you idiot. Give them the money. Like, you do not want to go to a Mexican jail. And so we kind of realized, we loved it down there. We loved teaching. It was fun. We had friends down there. We made friends, but we're also pretty vulnerable. Like, we're just sitting ducks. We kind of got lucky. We never got robbed. We were sure we'd get robbed down there at some point, but we didn't. We even got interviewed for some local TV station and be like, hey, let's find some white tourists and interview them and tell them like life is safe down here. Funny thing is, Guadalajara has a very rich neighborhood called Zapopan. And a lot of cartel heads have like mansions in this super rich neighborhood. And we were living in like this dingy, like Centro Histórico, this old sort of beat up old downtown kind of thing. And just like eating street food off these local taco vendors. It was great. So I really loved it there. But 2 days after we left, there was a drive-by shooting right outside our school, and like 2 people were killed. I was like, maybe we got the sign to like leave at the right time. So we actually got job offers from Italy, because we were planning on heading down to South America. We're going to go down to Peru and, Machu Picchu and that kind of thing. That was what we were going to do. But we were like, okay, well, let's see if we can find some other English teaching jobs down there. And my wife was like, hey, there's this job offer in Italy. Let's try this. I was like, okay. I didn't think they would take me because it was actually teaching English to children. And my wife, childhood educator, she's a trained clown and theater performer and all this. I'm like, yeah, they're totally going to take you. I'm like an ex-military guy with a chemistry degree. Like, they're not going to hire me, but let's try anyways. And then turns out they did. They didn't care. I could teach English. So the funny thing is in Italy, I was a huge hit. Italy still has a very, I'll say, male-centric culture. And so for female teachers, it can be a bit rough because Italian children have to be among the worst behaved in the world. Yeah, they're terribly behaved. They whine and kick and cry and scream and snivel and all the rest of it. They're like, they can be some of the most frustrating kids to work with. You know, the Mexicans, they had just it was like tons of fun. They had so much energy and enthusiasm, but like, they were like, hey man, like learning English is important to me because I know it represents more opportunity. So they actually wanted to. So that's why we loved it so much. Italy was just kind of like, they're just chaotic. But it's that whole passed down from generation to generation, right? They kick and scream and cry and fight with each other and whatever else. But I walk in the room and I'm a 6'1", 240. Like, these little kids were all like, whoa, you're a pretty big guy. Okay, we'll listen to you. And so there's a video somewhere on the internet, hopefully it's not easily found, of me like leading the circle of 200 children in the song about peeling bananas and eating bananas and pounding my chest like a gorilla. And they're just, but the funny thing is, so I would go in there and for the first, like, I don't know, week, I just wouldn't crack a smile with this group of kids. I'd just be Mr. Hardass kind of thing. But then after that, they were like, okay, we can have fun with this guy as long as we sort of stay within the bounds. And by the end of camp, like every kid was like running up and wanting to like get a hug or a high five from me and things like that. Whereas a lot of the young female teachers, bless their hearts, they would go in there and, oh, they're so cute and they're adorable and blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, these little children are monsters, okay? You have to see them as that first. And by like the third week, they're all yanking their hair out. Like, I can't control my classroom. I was like, now to be fair, like I said, hey, if I was like a 5'2", 98 pound, like 19-year-old female, I probably would have a hard time too. But I wasn't. So that was kind of a fun experience. But that company that we worked for, they were posing as like a non-profit organization, well, to avoid like higher taxation in Italy. Right. And they got raided by the Guardia di Finanza, which is like their financial crimes police. Their offices did. Thankfully, we weren't around at the time, but we didn't really have an actual visa for working in Italy. They made us cash in envelopes. We're like, whatever. Turns out the whole world of teaching English is pretty shady. Anybody who's like taught English overseas will like know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, yes, there's some reputable schools out there. That's probably about 1 in 5. Like the whole English teaching world is pretty shady. They just take advantage of the fact that a lot of us just want to go to some other country, have a different experience, pay us in cash, who cares, kind of thing. You know, it was no different in Mexico too. I'll share with just one funny story from Mexico. Because they couldn't use my name on any official documents about the classroom stuff because I wasn't on the books. I didn't know this, but it turns out I wasn't. So it would always say like pendiente for the name of the teacher, meaning like teacher pending. But Mexicans have a lot of, I'm going to say, phallic slang. So I thought one day it'd be funny to write on the board, Señor pendiente. And they said to me, hey, teacher, I don't know if you want to write that. I'm like, why? And they're like, they're like trying to be polite to me. Right. Because like, we don't want to be too hard on this guy. But apparently pendiente is slang for a swinging penis. And I was like, dang, you guys. Because at first they were just like laughing uproariously. And then when one student very kindly came up to me and was like, hey, maybe I should clarify this for you. Wow. And yeah. And of course, they'd always like, what'd you have for breakfast? Huevos. Ha ha ha. Like huevos are slang for balls, like huevos, eggs, balls, whatever. Like everything is like innuendo with them. So once you figure this out, it gets to be a lot of fun and it gets pretty funny. But I was the butt of a few jokes in Mexico just because of that.
Yeah. So all right, so you went to Italy. You went from Mexico. It sounds like you had fun in both. What was it? Did you do another contract or did you end up going?
No, so in Mexico we met a guy from South Africa. He was living in the same hotel as us starting out with. And so when we were in Italy, we ended up actually going to Poland to teach English and lived in Poland for a year. Well, like 10 months for like a school year kind of thing. My brother was living in Turkey at the time. He still does to this day. And so we went to Poland, and this guy from South Africa came to Poland and lived with us over there and taught English for a bit. But then being South African, like his travel is a little bit harder, especially in Europe. The owner of the school, again, tried to erase the stamp out of his passport to get him to stay longer. And he's like, whoa, like, that'll get me arrested, man. Like, so he had to go back home. So we ended up going down to South Africa, and that's where I went through like a life-changing experience. We moved down to South Africa and started teaching down there. And it was down there that we were teaching on a nature reserve. So we thought this is great. You know, we're not naive. Like we know South Africa, but we went down there 2011. It was a year after the World Cup. We're like, man, they invested in all this infrastructure, all this security to have like a safe World Cup, all this kind of stuff. We're going down with South African friends. We're going to a city that's known to be reasonably safe, all this kind of stuff. And so we live in a town called Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape. So it's halfway between Port Elizabeth, East London, for those of you who know South Africa. And so we were out on this nature reserve. And one night, we'd only been there about 2 weeks. All our luggage got lost. And we landed in South Africa the end of July, beginning of August, which is middle of winter down there. And although it's not winter like we have in Canada, it's blinking cold because they don't insulate their houses. And so we had like no clothes for like 3 days down there. So it's funny because people think traveling the world, this is amazing. This is this great life, lifelong adventure. It kind of is. But then you have stuff like this happen all the time. And you're like, oh, it's not so easy just going to the store and getting some more clothes or something. But down there, one night, Monday night, August 15th, 2011, I was going back to the instructor's cabin, which was kind of nestled away in the trees. There's monkeys, there's all kinds of wildlife out there. This is South Africa. And the door to the cabin was like slightly ajar. And so my thought was, oh, maybe I forgot to lock it. I look back now, I realized I forgot to notice or failed to notice deadbolts sticking out. The door opens and I see 3 guys at the table. I recognized one of them, but he wasn't in uniform. He was one of the Rangers, but he was off duty. So then my first thought goes to, oh, maybe they were going to repair the tap or something. Because it was Monday, maybe someone who was, because we would go back in town on the weekends. Maybe someone made a complaint about something, they were coming to repair something. Yeah. No, they weren't. I didn't see the 4th guy who then smashed me over the head while I'm standing at the door, kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. He smashes me over the head with a rock. And yeah, then blood starts kind of pouring into my eyes. I'm kind of seeing stars. I'm a little bit dazed. These guys jump up off the table. They were drinking tea and rusks, right? Rooibos tea and rusks. So if you're South African again, you'll know Rooibos tea and rusks. They were like literally just helping themselves to our food. They weren't expecting me, I don't think, to come back at that time. They were robbing us, really, is what they were doing. The ranger would have tipped them off, and then they would have come in to rob us, basically. And so these guys just, I get smashed over the head again, like I fall to the ground. I'm like, no, I'm not unconscious, thankfully, but I'm like, I don't know what is going on. And these guys, just started like stomping and kicking and beating on me. And there's one thing that kind of stuck in my mind, though, and that was I'm wearing like a collared golf shirt for those who are listening. Those who are watching a shirt like this. And this guy, and it's dark out, too. Here's the thing. It's dark. I'm by myself. Like everyone else is in a building like 200 feet away, and it's noisy. It's well lit up. They can't see or hear me at all. And I'm by myself. This guy grabbed me by the collar of the shirt as he's swinging the rock towards my face to smash me over the head again. And he says, shh. And that just like chilled me to the bone. Like this guy's smashing me across the face, intending to kill me. And he's kind of smiling as he's doing this. It's very unnerving to actually stare into the face of pure evil. Yeah. So I don't know how I got the strength to get up. I've been smashed over the head multiple times with a rock. I've been beaten and stomped and kicked, and they're laughing and having a time at this because they know that nobody can hear me. And there's kind of a cultural part of it down there. Like they could have just stabbed me and walked away, but they wanted me to suffer. So they were gonna make this last kind of thing. And maybe that's the reason I'm still alive today. I don't know if you have any religious beliefs. I'm a Christian, and I say that I believe that like God gave me the strength to get to my feet. Like these guys weren't huge, and I'm a big guy. I had that to my advantage, and I managed to get to my feet and kind of fight them off enough to start stagger running as I'm stunned and I got blood in my eyes and I can't see straight or anything. But I'm towards the light, the building, and for whatever reason they didn't chase me. They could have, but they didn't, and I don't know why. So I got to the building, the door. I walk in the door. I'm like, I've been attacked. I don't know how many guys are out there because, in South Africa, they could travel in packs of 15, 20 guys. Like the violence down there is just, it's on a level that we don't like. You'll see it in like maybe some inner cities in the U.S., but this is like an everyday thing down there. Like this is just, it's, anyways. So all our students freak out too, right? And we're kind of barricading the buildings. We turn the lights off. We put, I would say I wasn't doing any of this. I was just slumped over holding a fork, thinking I was going to defend myself with a fork. Well, blood's pouring out of my head. Like, what's going on? I don't know what day of the week it is, kind of thing. My wife was incredibly brave in all of this. She's like directing, they're boiling water. They pushed her fridge against one door. She's just arming whatever they can find because we don't know how many guys are out there. and we could be in for some kind of fight. Thankfully, one student had their cell phone with them. Most of them didn't, because they weren't supposed to have their cell phone with them during like learning hours, or in this case, it was hospitality preparation. So it was like serving hours, and some of them would like run the kitchen and be waiters and stuff like that, you know. But one had their phone and was able to call a police station. And by a stroke of luck again, it was like a senior police captain who walked by an office where this phone rang and picked it up, because most times the police don't even care. They're just there to collect a paycheck and not get hurt. But he picked it up and he dispatched some police. But the problem is, we're 45 minutes from the nearest town. And to get to where this nature reserve is, you have to drive down through a valley. So at night, these police cars, they drive in the front gate, and they have like their lights flashing, and you can see all the way across the valley where there's still 25 minutes drive away, because it's not a straight road. It's this windy, bumpy, down through the valley, back up the other side to get to where we are kind of thing. And so these guys, I forgot to mention, they were trying to smash the doors down, the windows down with shovels, but doors and windows in South Africa, they have bars on them. And so they were trying to break the doors down to get in. Now, they probably would have been in a fight for their lives if they did get in, because there were 25 of us in there, and we would have been fighting for our lives. But anyway, so they could see the police, and they just kind of like melted into the bushes. As the cops get there finally, and they come in, and they go, "Oh, nobody died or got raped? No? Okay, cool. We're going to leave now. You're probably just fine."
What?
My wife was like, "No, you're not. My husband needs to get to a hospital, and they're still out there, and some people saw their faces. You're going to take statements." Oh, these guys, they were thick as bricks. But you know, we have our problems with police. I understand that. But by and large, they're competent.
Right.
These guys don't even care, let alone are they competent.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So, you know, got to the hospital. It was like, you know, I was concussed, but it wasn't like, you know, but had they knocked me out? So it turns out the night before, these guys had beat to death another guy, smashed his head in. And I don't know why the cops told. Why would you tell someone this? Like, oh, you're lucky. They smashed the other guy's head in last night. So I guess this is a crew of guys that went and smashed a guy's head they said smashed his head in like a pumpkin.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And I was like, why would you tell me that? Yeah. So there was a lot of fallout from that.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't even fathom what you went to. So yeah. How long did it take you to recuperate from that?
Well, and I guess I'll say one other thing. So while I was like being attacked, it was dark out. I couldn't really see the guys. I'm concussed. I'm dazed. I don't even know what day of the week it is or where I'm at. I'm just trying to stay alive. I'm like, I can't die tonight. I can't die tonight. You know, that's running through my head, screaming for help. And for me, I'm like, maybe I got a taste of hell that night. Screaming for help, nobody hearing me, you know, that kind of thing. So that left like a mental scar as well. So physically, you know, bruised ribs. They didn't break any bones because, you know, I'm fairly thick. And so they'd have to hit me pretty hard. They didn't manage to break any bones. They didn't fracture my skull. Like it was all at that point surface level because they didn't finish the job. They were just having so much fun kicking and stomping and beating on me that they didn't finish the job. And that's oddly enough something I can be grateful for because they were taking their time. But mentally, you know, now we're like severely traumatized, but I got no idea what trauma is. I don't know what PTSD is. I don't know any of this stuff. So, you know, we're basically going to shock. We're like, hey, they're not going to win. They're not going to win. We're going to stay here. We love the work that we're doing. We're going to stay here. So we stayed on for another 4 or 5 months in South Africa. And in that time, so we were like, okay, we're not staying out overnight on the nature reserve anymore. We're going back into town every night. And our students aren't staying out here either, you know, because we're not putting them at risk either. So we got housed in the town and just got kind of bussed out every day. But in the remaining about 4.5 months that we were still down there, the house that we lived in was broken into 13 times. We had the copper pipes cut out for copper, so then we lost our running water. It's like living in prison, but the inmates are on the outside. And in all of this, like I got to the place where I was ready to start making traps so that when they broke in, like I could catch them and I could tie them up and I could beat them to death. And that was when I knew we had to get out of there. Because there's a part of my brain that went, this is insane. You can't do this. You're not this person. But it's hard to explain to someone who's never been like violently traumatized, like the kinds of intrusive thoughts that come into your head when you're not sleeping. When you sleep maybe a couple hours a night in batches, you sleep with weapons by your bed, and you're, every single night you're just ready. Is someone going to break in tonight? Is this the night that we have a gang of guys breaking in? Like, yes, we had panic buttons that would call private security that would show up in probably 5 minutes or less and shoot to kill, basically. That was, but that's a common industry in South Africa, and that's literally what they do. Like, it's a world that we kind of, like, I grew up in small town Canada. So when I got to the place that I was wanting to kill people, I realized that we had to get out of there. We couldn't stay.
I get a question. What, after this massive beating that you took, what kept you there for another 4.5 months?
Honestly, I think it was hearing our students' stories.
Okay. So
in all of this, I hope that I want people to understand that South Africa is a very beautiful country. And there are some wonderful people in South Africa. We love, our students would hug us. We love you. Like, it was, I don't know if they'd ever said it to white people before, but because we're not white South African, maybe it was like, we actually, because, but we heard their stories. Like, they went through crazy stuff. The stuff that we went through, yeah, in one sense, it was pretty tame. Probably at least half the women had been raped, and 1 in 4 women had been gang raped.
Oh, wow.
It's called jack rolling down there. And it's a sport.
It's a sport?
It's, okay, so here's the thing that people might not fully grasp. They have different ideas about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And there's different rituals depending which tribe. South Africa has 11 major ethnic groups, 8 major like black tribal groups in there. They call it the Rainbow Nation because there's so many different languages and groups of people. Turns out they mostly don't like each other and fight with each other a lot. And they fight with each other over like cultural things, among other things. But most women have been, in fact, I think every woman, in fact, every person, every student that we had been like a victim of either witnessing or a victim of violent crime. Seeing their family members murdered, seeing their mom get raped, like this kind of stuff. And so somehow in our reasoning, we just went like, we can't abandon these kids. Like, they're young adults. They're like between 18 and 28 kind of thing. We're like, we can't abandon these kids because this happened to us. Like, we're trying to help them maybe like better their lives and so that they don't live in a world that's like this. And so that kept us there. But obviously I was traumatized, PTSD. I mean, now, to be fair, my wife was traumatized too. And a lot of people overlooked her trauma, like, because she wasn't physically attacked. But she watched her husband stagger through the door, blood covering his face, like, beaten, like muddied and bloodied, and was like, is my husband going to die? That leaves an imprint too.
It's extremely noble, and I love the fact that you were able to look past that for the students. Like, that is, in my book, the so praiseworthy I can't even imagine, because I don't know when you go through that type of trauma. I don't know if I could have done it. I think I would have been out of there.
Yeah, well, and so normally this city was seen as like, it's a university town, it's pretty safe, all this kind of stuff. But with like the national police force, they'd been trying to like clean up crime to some degree. And so they've been making a bigger push in the major cities. And so I guess there was like roving gangs that came to this town, basically, because there's less police presence.
Okay.
But the other thing, like one of the other facilitators, who was a black guy, they took his brother, put him in a building, locked him in a building, and set it on fire.
Oh,
like,
that's so pure evil.
It is, and they do this because they're trying to send a message. So, see, here's the thing: their education system is broken. Their public education system is broken. If you can afford private school, you can get a decent education in South Africa. Their public education is broken. Students sleep with teachers. Teachers show up drunk. It's broken, like in ways that we can't imagine. Maybe, again, some inner city schools in the U.S. might understand this. And so education is like the way out of some of this. But education means that, like, we get smarter and we might not like join the gangs or be a part of the gangs or things like that. And so, well, then when that sort of stuff is happening, like we got to try to send a message because you're interfering in our community, the place that we control. So just like stuff like that kept happening. And we were just like, we can't take this anymore. That was when I was like on the verge of wanting to kill somebody. And I'm not that person, I can reassure you. But in that traumatized like state where I hadn't slept for like weeks on end, like maybe slept a couple hours a night kind of thing, just like living on survival mode, feeling constantly under attack. Like, and so we flew back to Australia, where my wife is from. And I got a job on a cotton farm in rural Queensland. The town's name is like one word. They have a town up there called Banana, but it wasn't Banana. And the town Banana is named after a yellow cow, of all things.
Okay.
Yeah. Maura. There's this town called Maura, 100 people. And I was on some farm like 30 miles out of town kind of thing. So I was like in bumfart nowhere, rural Queensland. And I was given like this trailer to basically live in. My wife lived with her parents who lived in the city of Rockhampton in Queensland. And I went out to work on this farm. And it was probably like in one sense the best thing. But like I would go to sleep in this trailer. I was the only farmhand at the time because it was slower season. It wasn't busy season where they would have like 5 or 10 laborers. I was the only one other than the family. So here I am sleeping in this trailer in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, and there wasn't even locks on the doors. I was just like, I had to keep reminding myself, like, I don't have to sleep with a baseball bat beside my bed because there's nobody coming to get me. But it probably took a month before I was even comfortable, like, relinquishing the baseball bat beside my bed. Like,
yeah, I've got a little bit of experience like that. I go into it, but I get it. I totally get that. So real quick, so your wife was living with her parents. You were out 30 miles working.
I was like probably 4 or 5 hours from where they are, but like 30 miles out of the nearest town kind of thing. Yeah.
So how do you maintain a relationship?
Oh, she'd come out, or I'd go home on the weekends, or they'd actually come out and like stay in the trailer for the weekend kind of thing. In the farm, they were okay. Like, so that was not my wife was used to me being in the Navy and going away and stuff. Like, we're coming up on 18 years together.
Nice.
We've been through a lot together. Getting close to that 2 decades, which is kind of cool. Actually, it feels like a real accomplishment. But here's the other part. So I'd really become a binge eating food addict at that point. Of course, I had no language to express. I didn't know what was going on. There's something about like dissociating with your body. Like not even people like, didn't you notice you were gaining a whole bunch of weight? And I was like, well, no, because in my traumatized state, it's like the self image I had was frozen of this guy that was reasonably athletic. The guy that lifted weights and played sports. Like I can't hardly explain it to someone, but I was like, it wasn't registering in my brain that this was happening, but I was just like smashing food. And of course, living out on this farm with, I would just go to the local grocery store, buy pizzas and hash browns and whatever, and just like mow through food like nobody's business. And I blew up to like 330 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And thankfully I had this physical job because that probably stopped me from hitting 400 pounds. Like it was hard work on this cotton farm.
That's what I was going to ask, because I was like, man, I know what it's like to work on a farm, and it's not easy. I mean, you're killing 2,500, 3,000 calories a day just in work.
Yeah.
And that means you had to be eating like 4,000 to 4,500 calories over what you burned over your BRM.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the one thing I remember about it is, so the way they would do irrigation there is you have like irrigation trenches that run alongside their paddocks, which is what they call their fields. Right. And then what you do to sort of get reasonable level irrigation is you get like these 10-foot like PVC pipes that are maybe 4 inches in diameter, and you pump them into the water that's running on the irrigation channel to get them to act like a siphon, throw them over the edge of the ditch, and then water starts running in. And you have to go around and basically make sure they're all like, because you don't want to do spray irrigation because it's just too hot and you just lose way too much moisture. So you do like irrigation like this, and they had a property right on the river, so they could pull water off of there. And the river is flooded. But anyways, so that's the part that I remember about the physical job. But so now I've like lost myself. Who am I? Who is this guy? Just for the sake of time, we'll fast forward a little bit. We eventually got back to Canada. We went back to South Africa, would you believe? But only for about 3 weeks. we went to the Western Cape. We went to Cape Town. We went, Table Mountain. Like we wanted to have a positive experience in South Africa. We didn't want to leave with our last memories being like cowering in some guy's like guest house at midnight, hiding behind the bed we tipped up on its side because we thought someone was trying to break into the house. It turns out he just went out to his garage to get something he'd forgotten. Like that's how like traumatized we were. Whispering to each other, like texting him under like the blankets so the light of the phone wouldn't show that we were there. Like, hey, we think there's someone in your property, that kind of thing. So we finally got back to Canada, and we were very different people. And these young kids who'd like flown to Mexico, just kind of like, whoa, hey, let's just like go and travel the world and all of this. And now I'm just like obese and puffy and like, how did I get here? So I thought I was going to go back to the Navy. So we went and lived with my parents in this little town called Okanagan Falls, 1,500 people. I tried getting a job locally. Couldn't even get a job at the local corner store. Nobody would hire me. This is super, super depressing. Now, I did start doing like some training. They're on the shores of a lake. So I went and I started training there, and I got my weight down to about 265 because I was trying to get ready for the physical to try to get back into the military. So what else am I going to do? I guess I'll just go back to the military that I'd left three years earlier, kind of thing. But my paperwork got hung up in Ottawa, and they were dragging their feet.
Right. Well, I mean, so I got to tell you. So I'm curious because you said you just kind of went down to the lake and started training. I'm interested just because of obviously of who I am, what you did, because it's still 70 pounds.
Oh yeah. Well, at first, because I was like, I have to be able to pass the beep test. For those who don't know, it's like you run from one side to the other. Maybe it's like 40 meters or something like that. And then the beep gets gradually faster. So you pick up your pace until, at a certain point, you're basically sprinting back and forth between the two. And if you miss crossing two lines, then you're done. That's what level you got to. At my fittest, I ran 11 and a half on the beep test. That was at boot camp. But you had to run, I think, like a 6 to pass.
Okay.
So I got it's funny, I didn't have an app, didn't have a smartphone. So I got an app, not an app, sorry, a recording of the beep test, put it on my little MP3 player. There was some knockoff MP3 player of the beep test. And at first I couldn't even get to a 3 on the beep test. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And I basically figured out a distance between 2 park benches was approximately that. And then I just made 2 park benches and a paved path on the edge of the sand where the little sort of beach was on the lake shore, and figured out roughly what the beep test would be. And so I was like, okay, I got to, and so I managed to get myself up to a 6.5 on the beep test over a span of about 3 months.
So is that what you were doing? I mean, you went down to the lake every single day and you just kept doing the beep test until
I had no job.
You had some progress.
We were living in my parents' little like small house. Yeah. I had to get out of the house somehow. Like it was awkward being 30 years old, having to go back to your parents as like a morbidly obese, traumatized, whatever. Like, and my parents were very loving and patient and kind and gracious in all of this, but like it's hard.
Yeah.
And I was like just trying to get like a local job and I couldn't get a job at a corner store or liquor store or anything like that. Like nobody would hire me. We had no money because I wouldn't qualify anymore for employment insurance, even though I'd paid into it for a number of years in the military, because I'd been out of the country for too long. So that sort of expires. So I was on the brink. I'd already applied for welfare, and I'd got my first call. No, I was 2 days before I got the call about my first welfare payment getting deposited in my bank account. Like, this is where I'm at now. Living in my parents' house, about to collect welfare. I get a call from an old buddy of mine. He said, hey, I'm dean of trades at this school, and we're starting a new program, a power line program. Would you be interested? I know your background. I know you have a background in like marine engineering and stuff. Like you have the technical knowledge for this. Would you be interested in being a part of it? And I was like, yeah, heck yeah. Years ago, I'd thought the power line trade would be a very cool one to get into because I knew they paid well, and it was a good physical job that had a high pay. It's a hard industry to break into because it's a lot of like your brother or your dad kind of thing.
Right. Now, can you explain what power line is?
Oh, so building like utilities and towers. So
okay.
Think about your power pole that has like wires running, that kind of thing. So everything residential to, which is your the wires running to your house or underground substations and that kind of thing, to building 200-foot towers. I didn't get to do highline work when I was in the trade. That's the stuff that really pays good money. But again, you got to work. You got to be a grunt for a long time before they're going to anywhere near that, because that's paying like $250 an hour kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah. I would have been okay with that.
But you were able to break in.
Yeah. So that was like my ticket into the trade. And then, so I'd got that call and it accepted. And then like 2 days later, I got this call about like my first welfare payment. And I was like, oh, well, it turns out I qualified for this trade here, this trade school, and I now have a job. And so then we had to move to Vancouver. So we could leave my parents' place, give them them a break, moved to Vancouver, and started working in the power line trade. So I was a grunt. And then I did that for a couple of years. That's how I ended up in Alberta. I came out to Alberta because BC is like heavily union. Like you're grounded for like the first 4 years before they even start. Like it's just, they make you earn your stripes hard. And I was like, man, I'm 31 years old. Like I want to start a family at some point in my life. Like I can't just wait 8 years to like get qualified. So I came out to Alberta and it was like, boom. Oh, you've already done your first year of school and you have X number of hours working the trade. Cool. You're already a second year. So I went from being what's called a trades trainee and a grunt and a nobody to first day on the job out in Alberta. They're like, hey, up that pole.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That was a good move.
Yeah. And so I was like, man, I've been like practicing for this day. Where I lived in Vancouver, they had some power poles right outside their property. And I would take my climbing gear, because I had the gear, and I would climb the poles just to practice. And I would put like tape around the pole, and that would be like my markings, climb up and down. And it's probably illegal to do that, but I had the climbing gear, and so I did.
Yeah.
So I worked for a company that built rural utilities and utilities to like energy projects, i.e. oil and gas, getting power out to these drilling sites and things like that. So it was hard going. You're climbing poles all day long. Like you frame a pole on the ground, you get all your poles framed up, then you get all your poles in the ground, then you got to climb up and get the wires on and stuff like that. So it was a very, very physical job. And so that helped me to lose some weight. But then I got injured. I slipped on an icy road and landed awkwardly on my arm and I injured my elbow. And so this is about 2014 now. And I couldn't climb without pain. And I did rehab and all this kind of stuff. But once you make an employment insurance or workers' compensation claim, you're blackballed from the industry. It's a very insular industry. And it's like, that's it. So they couldn't fire me while I was under rehab. But as soon as my rehab was done, they were like, oh, sorry, we ran out of work. I was like, you liars.
What?
You liars.
So you slipped on an icy road while you were at work?
Yes.
And claim workers' comp, and then they say, oh, well, sorry. What?
You ran away.
That's so, down here in the States, we don't hear about employment and things going on in Canada. As much as I love my country and I'm very patriotic and I fought for it and the whole bit, we're kind of me-centric. We're very, self-centered. So we don't really get into, the politics. The politics, yes, because I'm a huge Pierre Poliver fan. I love that guy. You might not, but anyway. What?
I like the guy.
Yeah, good. I like him too. And just because of the internet, and what Trudeau is doing to you guys is like ridiculous. But beyond that, we don't get into the nitty gritty. Just to hear that there's stuff like this going on, because you don't hear as bad as some things can happen here in America. That is very rare that would happen. And if it did, there'd be lawsuits going on like crazy.
So here's the thing: I could have fought that because I knew exactly what they were doing. But now I'm in a company where nobody likes me. Nobody wants me around. And they're just going to make my life a living hell. I knew what they were going to do. Like, they'll get you out on the rural lease road and they're just going to give you the most miserable jobs and miserable tasks. You're just going to be working way harder than everybody else. They're going to make your life so like a living hell until you quit. So I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's like It's like a cop like testifying against another cop. Once that happens, you're done.
Yeah. So I did temporarily get another job with another company, but the pain in my elbows and shoulders just kept coming back, and I couldn't climb. And if you can't climb, I tried to get on the city utilities where you ride the bucket trucks, but again, that's union. That's like your brother, your dad, that kind of thing. Killer interview, great candidate. Yeah, went to like the son of some guy. Now, at this point in time, my wife had to go back to Australia to get her permanent residency for Canada. So when you go through the permanent resident process, you either apply in the country, in Canada, and you're not allowed to leave the country for 2 years while it's being processed, or you go back to your home country and you can't come back into Canada. She opted to go back to her home country, which I supported, because like if something happens to her family, she's not going to like not go home and see them. And so we were apart for basically a year. And so I'm now living alone in a basement suite in Alberta with like no friends. I had a few, like hardly any friends, no job. I'm injured, unemployment insurance at least, and just badly depressed. Keep in mind, I've never really dealt with my trauma, and the eating and everything just came back. It all just came back. And I remember one night, like spite eating, like this entire like chocolate bundt cake that I bought from the grocery store, and just like binge watching Netflix or whatever it was at the time, just angry at myself, hating the world, just all this self-loathing that came back. One thing we didn't really get into, but I actually forgave the men who tried to kill me. I never saw them again, so I didn't do it in person. But when we were living in Turkey with my brother after the South Africa incident, and I was kind of psychologically decompressing there. I know some people are listening. What? Where? How do we connect all the dots? Sorry. But after we left South Africa the second time, before we got back to Canada, we stopped in Turkey to live with my brother for a little bit while I was just trying to psychologically decompress. And I was just tired of being angry. I was tired of the rage just like filling my body and just violent thoughts and all this kind of stuff. And I made the decision I had to forgive these guys. And for anybody listening, like forgiveness is a process. It wasn't like I made a decision like I forgive you and ta-da, I'm free. I had to make a choice. I was like, okay, how am I going to forgive them? Like, so when the rage would like come in, I would go, okay, I could, part of our brain can kind of think outside that super, super intense emotion. It's really strange, but it can. And I would try to think, what happened to those guys? What happened to them? What happened to them? This is their life. And it's not to excuse what they did. Forgiveness is not about them being absolved of the crimes they committed. But it was about me trying to cultivate a sense of compassion enough that I could think about what they did to me, what happened to me, and not hate myself and hate them and want to kill the next person I see. I didn't want to live with this rage inside of me, because that's probably why I was also like binge eating so much, is because I was so ashamed of the rage that I felt that I was trying to smother it and bury it deep inside me so that my wife wouldn't see it. Like, it wasn't that I acted out and punched walls and hit people. Like, no, it was all like being deeply buried inside of me and just eating me up inside, because I was like, this is not who I am. I don't want these thoughts in my head. I don't want to feel like this. Why do I feel like this? Why is this happening to me? And so that all came back when, back in 2014, when my wife was gone. I was living by myself in a basement suite without a lot of friends and injured and depressed and couldn't work. And like, what am I going to do now? And so I got a couple other jobs, got working in the oil patch, as we call it, did some trucking, did some fracking, some nitrogen pumping, equipment operation, that kind of stuff. I'm kind of glossing over the details for the sake of time. And then came an opportunity to work in a supplement store with a friend of mine. And so I was like, okay, I wanted to go to the oil patch because I don't want to be gone all the time, because they work rotational work, like 15 days on, 6 days off. And I'm like, it's not a way to have a marriage.
Right.
My wife, when she got back, I was like, okay. And we were actually going to move in 2015. We're all set to move to Australia. We're like, okay, that's it. We're packing up our life in Canada. We're going to move to Australia. Like, her sister lives in Switzerland. My brother lives in Turkey. Her family's over there. My parents are still here, but we're like, let's just move to Australia. But then I started helping my buddy out at his store because it was like struggling, and he was having a falling out with his business partner, all this kind of stuff. Turns out this buddy of mine is a narcissistic sociopath and a pathological liar. Yeah. Of course, I didn't know this. You don't go into a friendship or a relationship or whatever thinking this is the kind of person you're dealing with. You have no idea. So you're not even looking for the signs. 3 years into, I guess, again, for the sake of time, but 3 years into the relationship, the business was failing badly. It turns out he was like crooked accounting. It was being used to lose money and all kinds of stuff. And I just lost a mountain of money, over $100,000 that I invested in this business.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was bad. But along the way, in 2017, I was back to about 295 pounds. And I was trying to get some life insurance. And then they'd send a nurse to take your vitals.
Yep.
So she comes to the supplement store. Imagine coming to a supplement store, protein powder, pre-workouts, greens, vitamins, all this kind of stuff. And there's this 295-pound guy that greets you behind the counter. For starters. So I already hated myself for looking like this. I hated myself for what I'd become. I hated the fact that no matter how smart I was, I couldn't seem to find my way out of this. I didn't know the kind of help that I needed. So we go to the back room where we had a body comp scale and stuff like that for assessing people. I had to lie on the floor to try to get my blood pressure down. And it was still, couldn't get under 145/90. 295 pounds, high blood pressure. So now I have to get a rider, as it's called, put on my life insurance policy. I have to pay extra money because I'm more likely to die sooner. Oh, that was a wake-up call. So I was like, okay, I have to try again. I have to try to lose this weight again. So I hired a coach. And I hired him because I thought I wanted to look like him. Maybe I'll stop hating myself if I look like him. Yeah, he was in his 40s, jacked, whatever. And he never treated me the way that I treated myself. On the outside to other people, I was friendly, jovial, jolly fat guy, all this kind of thing. On the inside, I was just tearing myself up, hating myself, berating myself, beating myself, brutally awful, self-hatred and loathing. It was just, just awful. So then, of course, I expected this is how you get me results. So you're going to have to treat me like this, basically. I didn't verbalize it, but he did the exact opposite. He modeled for me compassion. And, I never understood compassion before that. Here's a guy in his mid who hates himself, who actually, even despite kind of being a Christian, sort of, had no idea what compassion actually was. I didn't know. And I don't know if this guy was or not. I have no idea. We never talked religion. But he modeled for me compassion. He showed compassion to me. He didn't hate me. He didn't tell me what a loser I was, what a hopeless sack of, that I was, this kind of all this kind of stuff that I was telling myself. And when I screwed up, I remember eating an entire pizza in my car in a parking lot, just hating myself through every bite, but spite eating, hating myself so much that you bought this, you loser, you're going to eat this entire thing, trying to make myself sick, just trying to somehow, I don't know, if I can eat enough of this and get so sick, maybe I'll never do this again. I didn't know how to get out of this. And so instead of berating me or talking down to me or belittling me for my self-destructive behavior, he was curious. He was hey, okay, so that happened. Tell me about it. And at first I was very resistant to all of this. I was like, whatever, man. Don't try and come out with this soft stuff. I know what you're trying to do. And for 4 months, nothing happened. But he wouldn't give up on me either. And then I'd paid for a year. So I was yeah. I tried to prove to him that he was going to fail working with me. Wow. There's no way. I am a hopeless case. You cannot fix me. I literally only signed up so I could tell everybody I tried so hard and couldn't do it. And he just kept being patient and compassionate with me, just refusing to give up on me. And, little by little, changes started to happen in a way that had never happened before. I'd never actually compliment myself. I can say this day, I'm a world-class coach and not even be ashamed of it. I would, go back 5, 6, 7 years, I would be hiding under my desk before I'd say those words to you because I felt I was so worthless. I have an incredible brain. I have a great brain for coaching. It's literally what I'm born to do. I love it so much. It just, like I said, I can't explain it. It just works. It clicks. It makes sense. But back then I couldn't even utter those words. Like I couldn't even think about it. And he just kept being patient and compassionate with me. And I thought I was going to lose 80 pounds in the year with him. I lost maybe like 50, 60-ish pounds, which is pretty significant, by the way.
It's huge.
But I'd lost and gained weight. I joke that I've lost 600 pounds, right? Because I've ridden the diet forward so much, like trying this thing and that thing. And my wife, bless her heart, my long-suffering wife, watching her husband just, heading straight to another brick wall, but not really being powerless to kind of stop me if I was going to do this thing and all over the place. Yeah, he just patiently and compassionately worked with me and just wouldn't give up on me. And it was just little wins, just a little bit of this, a little bit of this. Okay, hey, let's try this. Is this possible? You could have never convinced me this kind of approach could have worked. There's no way. I was trying to destroy myself in the gym, snorting pre-workout, screaming, lifting heavy metal, listening to heavy metal and lifting heavy metal. I was like, like I'm a pretty strong guy. I can lift a lot of weight. Not that anybody cares, it turns out. But none of it was getting me anywhere. I was still massively overweight, no matter how hard I lifted and how much I screamed and all this kind of stuff. And he took the totally opposite approach. And just bit by bit. And so I kind of kept going on that journey and I learned how to not hate myself. I had to first learn how to not hate myself before I could learn to love myself and appreciate myself. But it turns out like you can't beat yourself into a vibrant, healthy body. You cannot punish your way into vibrant health.
I have a couple of drill instructors that I can introduce you to that I would say differently, but I agree.
Of course, you can starve somebody and make them lean. You can put them through physical hell and get them in shape, but I wouldn't call that being vibrantly healthy.
No, I agree. I agree.
So if people ask, well, how'd you lose 100 pounds? Or how long did it take to lose 100 pounds? I'm like, like a decade. And that's not the answer they want to hear. Of course, you want to hear that it took me 6 months. This crazy, cool, Instagram-worthy transformation story. And it's like, no, this was like slugging through hell, my own internal hell, fighting myself every step of the way, hating myself, like just, getting somewhere, losing 50 pounds and then gaining 60 pounds, working hard for 4 months and destroying it all in a month and just not understanding why and what the heck's going on in my brain. We didn't even mention the anxiety and depression part, like, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be respectful time, but like
it's almost inferred, right? I mean, PTSD, you're by yourself. I mean, part of this has to be causing you some anxiety and some depression.
Oh man, first
without your wife for a long time. I mean, it's just got to be hell on you. Yeah,
I had no idea what was happening either. Like I didn't have the language or the understanding that this is a panic attack. Like what? And I would have denied it anyways. Get all angry and whatever. This isn't happening to me. Whatever. Yeah.
No, I get it. After 9/11, I was on I went through a set of panic attacks that kept me on the couch, where I literally could not move. Like it would hurt to go to the bathroom, until I was able to get through it. So I get it.
Yeah. So this coach, along with I'll call him a neurologic chiropractor. I don't know what else to call him. He's a chiropractor, so you can bill under chiropractor, but he does other stuff. Studies brains and concussions and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of the chiropractic trade. No offense to chiropractors. I don't mind you as people, but like, I don't like, 18 treatments in 6 weeks, not getting me anywhere. Sorry. But this guy worked on my brain instead. And he did some like funky things that helped to calm my brainstem. When I would have a panic episode, it would feel like I was floating out of my body, like I was just dissociating entirely. It's the weirdest, most disconcerting feeling. What's actually happening in the brain is this parietal lobe. That's the part of our brain that deals with sensing our position in space. You hold your arm up, your parietal lobe kind of knows where you are, even if you shut your eyes, right? Well, that wasn't functioning in my brain, so I couldn't feel myself in my body. And so my first aid treatment was to punch myself in my left leg because it was the right side of my brain that was more under-functioning. A big, strong signal that says I'm physically present in my body. And then we did some other things to help my brain calm down. And I went 4 years without a panic episode.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I had one last year, but it lasted maybe 5 minutes. Like I knew it was happening. I just put on my pulse oximeter, tracked my pulse, did my breathing, and then just went back to sleep. So it's pretty empowering knowing now that, like, if it happens to me, I manage my sleep and my caffeine. Well, I joke, I don't manage my sleep. I have 2 kids. I used to manage my sleep.
They manage your sleep. Right, we got it.
Yeah. So that's like, I mean, obviously I know there's lots more that could be shared, but that's kind of how I got here. I got a lot of help. And maybe if there's like one thing that people take away, it's like, get help, ask for help, become vulnerable. You just like to try and it's just a fool's errand to try and do this on your own, to be like, I did this thing. Honestly, nobody cares. Get help. And if the person that you're with isn't helping you, then look for someone else. But when we connect to another human being in a compassionate way, and compassion doesn't mean enabling. It doesn't mean glossing over and ignoring unhelpful behaviors. It just means we remove the lens of judgment. So now we're gonna get curious about your behavior. We're gonna help you understand why this is happening to you. But there's no character judgment. You're not a bad person for what you're struggling with. Let's help you understand why this is happening. Behavioral psychology and neuroscience is kind of my thing, among others now. I love this stuff.
Oh, I love the fact that you put that with the weight loss, because I think, you got to start with the brain first. But what you mentioned, people don't understand that sometimes, like they think that asking for help is a sign of weakness when it's not. It's actually a sign of strength.
Yeah.
That there are skills and there is knowledge that you don't know, right? Yeah. Therefore, ask for help and gain the knowledge that you need. And sometimes that is, as a coach, to feed you this knowledge a little by little. I've got triathletes that I've been coaching for 6 years.
Yeah.
And I've actually told a lot of them, I'm like, hey, listen, why don't you try a different coach to get a different methodology? And they're like, why? I learn something from you every time we talk. So until you run out of things to teach me, I'm going to stick with you. And I'm like, can't argue with that. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I imagine that's the thing. So now that you've conquered, I wouldn't say you conquered, but you got down to this 100 pounds. Where did you then, how'd you turn that into, coaching?
Yeah. And I want to share something here. If you've been morbidly obese, you have to manage your weight for the rest of your life. I want to dispel a myth here. There's no happily ever after, in the sense that, like, I don't have to do anything again.
Right.
I still have to work at it every day. It doesn't mean I hate my life and it's miserable, but I have to work at it, because I'll get fat again real quick if I don't.
It's a habit. And it's a habit that you're going to keep for the rest of your life.
Yeah, we have to learn how to do this stuff. And like I said to a client of mine, there's going to be birthdays, there's going to be holidays, there's going to be grocery stores, there's going to be coffee and donut shops. Like, this is not going away. So you got to learn to live in this world instead of wishing it wasn't there to somehow make it easier for you. I hate, I'm like, this isn't going to sell me a lot of programs in one sense, but just telling people like it is, like, we got to figure out how to do this in the real world, because this stuff isn't going away. So we got to figure out how to live with it in a way that we're okay with.
Okay. You know what? That's a great segue. Well, it's not a segue. It's just a question. Yeah. So I'm going to ask for an example. So, okay, we know that we've got to live in this, let's use the coffee and donuts example.
Yeah.
We know we got to live in this world of coffee and donuts. Why don't you explain to me what you mean by that and what you would do in that situation, or what kind of coaching you would give in that situation?
I look for the simplest things. So let's just say you have a habit of driving past and getting a coffee and donut or whatever, coffee and muffin every morning. Can you drive a different way to get to the same place? So I call it, don't run on a sprained ankle. If something's a weak spot, don't unnecessarily aggravate it. Now, ultimately, longer term, what we want to do, so that's like a triage solution, right? That's an immediate solution to help. It's a pattern interrupt. Let's help you interrupt this pattern here. But it doesn't address like why you're going there all the time. So while we put this triage solution in place to help you, it's like, let's also figure out why this is happening. What need is this behavior meeting? So that's the kind of thing. So the triage solution buys us the time to do some of the deeper work that helps us to get past this stuff.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So here's kind of how I like to think about coaching. I got lots of analogies, but I'll give you two. Okay, in the Navy, when you get a bomb threat, two people have to search every space on the ship. You send in one person who works in that space every day and one person who never goes into that space. Why is that?
One person knows it like the back of their hand. The other one will find places that they never thought of.
Mm-hmm. When you live in something 24 hours a day, you're going to automatically overlook stuff. You just are. Michael Jordan had a shooting coach. Steph Curry has a shooting coach. Can they shoot as good as Steph Curry? No, but they don't have to be their coach. There's this funny little myth about coaching that in fact, Michael Jordan wasn't even a great coach. He was a terrible coach. Great basketball player, terrible coach. Phil Jackson, not a great basketball player, incredible coach.
Right.
Let's think about coaching differently. It's a different set of eyes that can see things that you don't see because you're in your own head 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
The other person goes, is this normal? Does that belong there? What about this thing here? Now you can say, because this is your world 24 hours a day, yes, that's normal, and no, that's not. It works incredibly well. The other thing about coaching is I like the idea of, how did somebody put it? A guide by your side, not a sage on the stage. You are the expert of your life. So maybe you've seen a driving instructor car, two sets of controls. You're in the driver's seat. Now I'm in the passenger seat. There's a steering wheel, brakes, and gas. But most of the time, you're driving. I'm just saying, hey, make a left here. Watch out for this thing up here. Turn right here. Stop here, please. That kind of thing. But you're in control. Because ultimately, at some point in time, we probably won't work together forever. My job then is to equip you with the tools to navigate this world. Now, how long that might take? 6 months for some people, 3 years for other people. Because here's the great thing about coaching, having that person with the controls beside you. You get to try to learn these new skills, because make no mistake, you're learning a new set of skills here, a new way to live in this world that is hostile towards weight loss, basically. It is engineered to make you obese. And a brain that wants to be obese. We didn't even get into our famine biology and why we want to be obese. But it's essentially so we can survive famines in the nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but just remember that. So now you've got someone who has your back. You get to try out these skills. You get to try to learn them. You get to screw up and make mistakes and come back and go, hey, what went wrong here? Let's work through this. I have clients who have been lying to me for 4 months. Not out of malice, not even out of shame so much. And I create a very compassionate, open space where there's no judgment. Right. But they have to get to the place where they accept being in that place. So I don't fault them for lying to me for 4 months. I don't think they're a bad person. I think they just had to get to the place where they're comfortable telling me what they're really doing. Where they can let go, just the same way it took me so long to get over my own self-judgment and self-loathing and self-hatred before my coach could help me. Because, make no mistake, if you're not getting results, I know you're not doing everything perfectly the way that you're telling me.
Exactly.
But there's no judgment there. That's not me saying you're a bad person. It's saying, let's figure this out. So I have a program called Lifestyle 180, and it's my flagship program. It's kind of my favorite one. It's 180 days. And of course, captured in the name is a 180 means a different direction in your life. The reason it's 180 days, or 6 months, basically, is because 3 months isn't enough. I used to have a 3-month program, 12-week program. The usual 90 days, 3 months, 12 weeks, whatever. There's also 30 days and 21 days and so on. And I have 14 days as well. But really, to do this, we have to commit to a longer period of time, because there's going to be the initial excitement phase. This is great. I'm doing everything right. Ticking all the boxes. Coach is smiling. I'm only smiling anyways, but I know that they're going to crash. They just don't know, and I don't want to spoil it for them. They're going to crash. They're going to hit the grind. They're going to hit the spot where I can't keep doing everything right because the dopamine from the initial excitement of starting something new has worn off. But the goal that I'm trying to get to is still in the distance. It's a ways off. I'm stuck in the messy middle. I don't feel motivated. The goal's far away. And I just want to go back to whatever I was doing before because it would be easier. Everybody gets there. And I know they're going to. I just don't tell them because I don't want to spoil it for them. I go, that's where the magic happens, where you stop performing and you start being real. And sometimes it takes a couple months before someone will do that. I can engineer a crazy good meal plan, a great training plan. I can help you, optimize your sleep and things like that. The best plan in the world means nothing if you can't stick to it. And if you can't stick to it, it's not because you're a bad person.
So, okay. I'm starting to see where we're going here. Obviously I'd be one of those people that would take me 3 months, just to get started. But yeah, so and you're absolutely 100% correct. And I listen to my clients think that's up to them all the time. And I'm constantly trying to redirect. Whereas people think that, hey, because I'm obese or because I've tried and failed, I'm a bad person. And they need to separate that. That's not truth. I mean, even me, I know that if I'm on the bike and I'm supposed to be hitting a certain metric for that workout and I miss my metrics, I'm like, oh, you loser. You know what I mean? And that's negative self-talk. Now, for me, I know that for me personally, the next workout will be like over and above much better because I said that, but that's just because I know my own self-talk and my own self-talk is sarcastic. But for a lot of people, and I've clients itself, is that if they don't hit their metric, they don't get the result it came from for an event that they're running in or something, they really do. They feel like they're a loser. And that's just not the case. It's just another experience and another learning point. Now you take that and now we make it better. And I'm constantly saying that, but it's really hard. I can say it every single moment. I can tell them, I can be compassionate, and I can show them, but for them to believe it is a hard thing. So where do you get to that point where you actually get your clients to believe those things?
Yeah, that's tricky. And I can't force a client to do that. But what I can do is help them, because here's a better question: is how do we change a belief? Right. I think that's a question, let's just call it a belief, a thought that we hold to be true, whether or not it's factually correct. And it's really deeply ingrained because you've held it to be true for a very long period of time. I'm never going to lose the weight because I've struggled and tried. Now, part of that is your brain making a prognosis. Your brain's looking at your past behavior to try to predict your future behavior and decide if it should spend energy on this endeavor or not. That's in a simplified version. That's what's happening. So you're encumbered by that, but I'm not. So that's where I get to look at you and see your potential. And I go, actually, here's what's possible for you. Now, you might not believe me yet when I say this because of that belief in your brain. But maybe you've heard about the circus elephant. The analogy of where the elephant was a baby and they chained it to a steel post in concrete and the elephant wasn't strong enough to pull it out and so on. And then it's this learned helplessness, essentially. Then you see the elephant as like a big, 5-ton, 10,000-pound majestic beast that can knock over trees and pick them up with his trunk and be used for logging, tied to a fence post. I think, why doesn't the elephant doesn't even try? Because there's this belief. So the human equivalent is kind of like you're tied to a surveying stake, a little 1x2 in the ground with an orange ribbon on top or something like that. And you're walking in a circle around this, just a pattern of behavior playing out and repeat. Surface circumstances look different, but the pattern of behavior remains the same. And your brain's telling you this is your safe place too. Let's not forget that. This is your safe place. Keep doing the same thing. I can keep you safe if you do the same thing. When you try to change it, it gets unsafe. That's what your brain's telling you, right? That primal part of your brain. When you take an action that is contrary to a belief that you hold to be true, you start to challenge that belief. But if you try to make it too big a leap, your brain will reject it. And you'll go right back. You'll even jam the stake back into the ground. This is where I belong, right? So you gotta be sneaky. You gotta be subtle. How did I go from hating myself to being able to say I'm a world-class coach and I love myself? How did I get there? I had to slowly chip away at that belief. It didn't change overnight. Brushing my teeth. Why did I brush my teeth if I hated myself? Because there's a part of me that said there's some value in me still. And so we turned brushing my teeth, a daily habit, into chipping away at this belief. I have value. I have value. I have value. It's okay. Putting a bottle of water beside my bed. So in the morning when I wake up, I hydrate. I have value. I have value. Just chipping away at it. That first step, pulling that stake out of the ground, it's kind of scary, And the first few steps away from that, you're dragging that stake behind you. It's getting snagged on weeds and roots and things like that. You're going to get tripped up by it. It doesn't, like, I love this expression that says relapse is as natural to change as exhaling is to breathing.
I like that.
The way that we're neurologically wired means that we're going to relapse. But if you know that it's going to happen, then you don't get stuck in a pity party thinking you're a terrible loser when you relapse into an old pattern of behavior. You can't take something that's been wired into your brain for 40 years and think in 4 weeks it's going to be different. Our brains don't work like that. You have to create new neural pathways in your brain. But to change a belief, an action that's contrary to the belief, a small one, repeated over time, until one day the stake just falls off. And you're free from it. I'd love to tell you it's a lightning bolt from heaven, but it's not. You chip away at it, little by little, actions contrary to that belief, until one day a new belief is fully blossoming in your brain.
That's amazing. It's also pretty beautiful. Relapsing is to change as exhaling is to breathing.
Relapsing is as natural to change as exhaling is to breathing.
Relapsing is as natural to change as exhaling. That's awesome. I love it. And we got to think about that. But that chipping away, that's the key right there. If you take anything away from this, it's that fact that if you want to make those changes, it's a small chipping away every day at the belief until you finally are able to let it float away. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I think that is probably the best place for us to start to wrap this up. And I think we've gotten such amazing information, and your story is incredible. And I'm very honored and privileged for you to share it with us. So Coach John is at freedomnutritioncoach.com. Yep. And then he's got a book, a free ebook that'll show you exactly how to crush your cravings. And that's
get you started.
freedomnutrition.com/book. And then I know you've got some, but where would you find, where's the best place to communicate with you? I know you've got all your socials here, but we'll put in the show notes along with that website. But where's the best place for people just to connect with you? And we'll have questions.
Probably by the website, actually, because you can email me from there. I'm not as active on social media currently as I used to be. I love social media. It's been great, and I'm not disappearing off of it, but it's also nice to not always have to be on there. Here's the other thing. If someone wants to talk to me, like just the way that you and I are talking, you can book a call for free. I will talk to someone for 30 minutes, no charge, nothing like that. No agenda, not even a pitch. The funny thing is I don't even pitch anymore. I'm just like, let me just talk to you and get to know you. And if it makes sense for us to talk about working together, that's cool. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not for everybody. And I'm so okay with that. It's so like awesome to be at that place, like in what I do, where people will figure out like, there's a connection here. I want to work with you. You can help me. Or some people are like, hey, the time isn't right. And that's so okay. Just shoot me an email or go to the website and book a free call to chat with me. I'd love to. Clearly I don't mind talking. So yeah.
No, you know what? It's so funny because I do the same thing. I do a consultant call. And then exactly. And I like, if you don't feel like it's for you, it's fine. You don't even have to make a decision today. Yet 75% of the people that go off and say, oh, let me think about it, come back and they book. So I think it's definitely the greatest model. And I don't pitch either. I just say exactly what you said. So
people are smart nowadays. They know when they're being gamed. Like consumers are way more savvy. I'm like, I'm not going to treat you like you're a dummy, and I'm not going to emotionally manipulate you. I'm just going to talk to you like a real human being. Tell you how valuable it is that I can help you, and let you decide.
Exactly. And on the website, he has got tons of testimonials on there that you'll have to take a look at. And some of them are absolutely amazing. So please take a look there. I will, obviously I'm going to put the website and his contact information in the show notes. He also has a podcast called Between the Before and After, The Stories That Shape Us. You said that you took a hiatus for a while, but there's 193 episodes in there for you to go back.
There's a few to look at. And it's amazing stories of people overcoming adversity in life. I realized we are so inspired by stories. That's why I love a podcast like this. We're inspired by stories. We look for ourselves and other people's stories to find hope for what's possible for us. And so I wanted to share more of those stories to give more people hope.
Exactly. So it literally that you can go back between the two. You can go back between life-changing challenges and between the before and after, and you're great stories. And
you'll be so motivated.
Exactly. And like I said before, I'm here to give you stories. We're here to give you stories of people that you'll get if you just get that one little nugget, just that one little piece of information that says, ah, then you're going to be able to take that and it causes you to take action. That's what we're here for. I consider it a win. So, Jonathan, thank you. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and with your story. That was a roller coaster of emotions and a ton of great information. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate that. All right, folks, until next time, don't forget to spark desire your limit.